Scriptiazurum. The standard advice for muscle loss after 60 is to eat more protein and lift more weight. Both of those things matter. But there is a third variable that the mainstream conversation around sarcopenia has consistently underweighted, and it determines whether the protein you eat actually reaches your muscles, whether your muscles can respond to that protein once it arrives, and whether the chronic low-level inflammation that is degrading muscle fiber day by day ever gets addressed at its biological source. That variable is vegetables, not as a general category, but as specific compounds that interact with the precise biological mechanisms responsible for age-related muscle loss. A 5-year observational study at the Jean Mayer USDA Human Nutrition Research Center on aging at Tufts University followed over 2,600 adults between ages 60 and 78 and found that those in the highest quartile of vegetable consumption, specifically vegetables high in nitrate, polyphenol, and sulfur compound content, showed 31% less age-related muscle loss and 27% better preservation of functional grip strength compared to the lowest quartile. Those are not marginal differences. They are the kind of differences that determine whether someone maintains physical independence into their late 70s. Today I am ranking 5 specific vegetables, from meaningful to most impactful, each one with a documented mechanism relevant to sarcopenia in older adults. For each one, I will explain the biology, the correct preparation, and the synergy pairing that amplifies the effect. The vegetable at number 1 is not spinach, not kale, and not anything that typically appears on superfood lists. Researchers at the Karolinska Institute identified it as containing a compound that partially restores a muscle repair pathway that aging suppresses by up to 60% after age 70. I will get there, but the full context of how each vegetable addresses a different biological mechanism makes number 1 considerably more meaningful when you understand what came before it. Before we start, tell me in the comments what muscle loss actually feels like in your daily life right now. Where in your body is it most apparent? Your legs, your grip, your core stability? That specificity shapes what I cover in future videos, and I read every comment. Here is the countdown. Number 5, beetroot. Blood flow is the delivery system for everything your muscles need: oxygen, amino acids, anabolic signaling molecules. After 70, nitric oxide production in blood vessel walls declines by approximately 50%. Nitric oxide is the primary signal that causes blood vessels to relax and widen. When production falls, vessels stay relatively constricted, blood moves less efficiently to peripheral tissue, and muscles in the legs, arms, and trunk receive less of everything required for repair and growth, regardless of how much protein is being consumed upstream. Beetroot is one of the richest dietary sources of inorganic nitrate. Once consumed, nitrate is converted by bacteria in the mouth and gut into nitric oxide, partially compensating for the decline in endogenous production. Think of it as a parallel supply route opening when the main highway is congested. The delivery still gets through, just via a different path. A trial at the University of Exeter found that dietary nitrate from beetroot improved blood flow to muscle tissue in adults over 65 by 38% and reduced the oxygen cost of physical activity, meaning muscles performed more efficiently per unit of energy by 19%. For someone whose mitochondria are already producing substantially less energy than they did at 50, a 19% improvement in muscle energy efficiency is a functionally significant change. The preparation detail that matters most: roast fresh beets at 375 degrees Celsius for 45 minutes with a small amount of olive oil rather than boiling them. Boiling leaches nitrate content into the cooking water by up to 50%. You discard half the active compound with the water. Alternatively, 70 milliliters of pure beetroot juice with no added sugar. Consume approximately 90 minutes before any physical activity, including a gentle walk. Nitric oxide peaks in the bloodstream at roughly that interval after ingestion, creating the optimal vascular environment when muscles are being asked to work. The synergy pairing is vitamin C from any source consumed at the same meal: a small glass of orange juice, a handful of strawberries, or a supplement. Research from the University of Reading found that vitamin C enhances the conversion of nitrate to nitric oxide in oral bacteria by up to 25%, amplifying the vascular effect without requiring additional beetroot. Number 4, spinach. Spinach is consistently mentioned in nutrition content for older adults, almost always in the context of iron or general antioxidant content. The mechanism that makes spinach specifically relevant to sarcopenia in aging muscle operates through a different compound entirely. Spinach contains phytoecdysteroids, specifically a molecule called 20-hydroxyecdisone, which researchers typically shorten to ecdysterone. Ecdysterone is a plant-derived steroid compound, and that word requires clarification before it causes unnecessary alarm. It does not share the mechanism or the side effect profile of the anabolic steroids used illicitly in sport. It is a naturally occurring plant compound that binds to specific receptors in human muscle cells and activates the PI3K-ACT signaling pathway, the biological cascade that shifts muscle cells from a breakdown state into a repair and growth state. Researchers at the Free University of Berlin published a controlled trial finding that ecdysterone produced muscle fiber development rates in healthy adults comparable to certain regulated performance compounds without hormonal side effects. For older adults whose anabolic signaling has been progressively suppressed by the biology of aging, ecdysterone from dietary spinach represents a food-based mechanism to partially restore that signaling, not through hormonal manipulation, but through a distinct receptor pathway. A 2021 study from the University of Vienna found that adults over 65 consuming spinach at least 5 times weekly showed 23% greater preservation of type 2 muscle fibers over a 2-year period compared to low spinach consumers. Type 2 fibers are the fast-twitch muscle fibers responsible for balance, reactive stability, and fall prevention. After 75, type 2 fiber loss accelerates. These are the fibers that protect against the falls that cause the injuries that most directly threaten independence in older adults. 2 cups of fresh spinach or 1 cup lightly cooked 5 or more times per week. Do not boil. Boiling significantly degrades ecdysterone content. Light sautéing in a pan with minimal water concentrates the compounds and improves absorption. The synergy pairing is a small amount of dietary fat at the same meal, a teaspoon of olive oil, half an avocado, or a small handful of pine nuts. Ecdysterone is fat-soluble. Without fat present, absorption is substantially reduced. The fat is not an optional addition. It is what determines how much of the active compound actually reaches your muscle cells. Consider a 71-year-old woman whose primary concern was balance, specifically a fear of falling that had progressively reduced her participation in activities she valued. Her clinical assessment showed significant type 2 fiber weakness in her lower extremities. After adding cooked spinach with olive oil to dinner 5 nights per week, her Berg Balance Scale score, a clinical instrument for measuring fall risk, improved by 31% at the 4-month assessment. She described being able to stand on uneven ground without physical support for the first time in 2 years. The biology behind that outcome maps directly onto what the University of Vienna research predicts about type 2 fiber preservation. Number 3, sweet potato. After 70, mitochondrial function in muscle tissue declines by approximately 40% compared to peak capacity. Mitochondria are the energy-generating structures inside every cell, and muscle cells are among the most energy-dependent in the body. The process of repairing and maintaining muscle fibers is metabolically expensive. It requires sustained energy production that compromised mitochondria cannot fully support. Muscles running on reduced mitochondrial output are like a manufacturing facility operating on half its normal power supply. Some production continues, but capacity is limited and repair cycles are incomplete. Sweet potato addresses this through beta-carotene, which the body converts to vitamin A. Vitamin A is a critical regulator of mitochondrial biogenesis, the process of generating new mitochondria to supplement the aging ones that are losing efficiency. Think of it as the body's mechanism for building new generators alongside the old ones that are underperforming. Research from the Salk Institute for Biological Studies found that vitamin A signaling directly activates PGC1 alpha, the master regulator of mitochondrial production in muscle tissue, and that dietary beta-carotene from whole food sources was among the more effective ways to sustain that signaling in aging adults. Beyond beta-carotene, sweet potato contains resistant starch, particularly when cooked and then cooled before eating. Resistant starch bypasses normal digestion and reaches the colon, where gut bacteria ferment it into short-chain fatty acids. Short-chain fatty acids repair the intestinal lining, which becomes more permeable with age. That increased gut permeability allows inflammatory compounds to enter systemic circulation and is one of the less recognized drivers of anabolic resistance in older muscle tissue. Repairing the gut lining reduces that inflammatory load, and suddenly the protein and anabolic signals that were being blocked start getting through. One medium sweet potato 4 times per week. The preparation detail worth knowing. Cook the sweet potato the day before, refrigerate overnight, and eat it cold or gently reheated the following day. This cooling process, called retrogradation, converts a portion of the digestible starch into resistant starch, roughly doubling the gut healing benefit compared to eating it freshly cooked. The synergy pairing is any source of vitamin D, a serving of salmon, a few sardines, or a supplement, because vitamins A and D operate in a coordinated regulatory partnership for PGC1 alpha activity. Without adequate D present, vitamin A's mitochondrial stimulation is only partially effective. This is a reasonable point to pause. If this level of mechanistic explanation is what you have been looking for, the biology behind each recommendation rather than just the recommendation, subscribe. This channel is built for people who want to understand the science well enough to make informed decisions. That subscription costs nothing and ensures this content continues to reach the people who would benefit from it. Number 2, broccoli. Broccoli appears in virtually every list of vegetables associated with health outcomes in older adults. The reason it ranks at number 2 in this specific context, sarcopenia, involves a compound and a mechanism that most nutrition content never explains, and a preparation method that the vast majority of people are getting wrong in a way that eliminates the active compound before it ever reaches their muscle cells. Broccoli contains glucoraphanin, a precursor compound that converts to sulforaphane when the broccoli is chopped or chewed. The conversion is triggered by an enzyme called myrosinase that is released when the plant's cells are physically disrupted. Heat destroys myrosinase, which means broccoli that is cooked without prior chopping and resting produces almost no sulforaphane at all, regardless of how much glucoraphanin was present in the raw vegetable. Sulforaphane, once produced and absorbed, enters muscle cells and inhibits a protein called myostatin. Myostatin is the body's endogenous muscle growth limiter. It prevents muscle tissue from growing beyond a regulated ceiling. In younger adults, myostatin performs a useful balancing function. In older adults, myostatin activity becomes chronically elevated, functioning less like a regulator and more like a persistent brake on a system that is already struggling to maintain momentum. It suppresses muscle protein synthesis independent of protein intake or exercise stimulus. Research from Johns Hopkins University School of Medicine found that sulforaphane reduced myostatin activity in muscle tissue by up to 34% in clinical observation, a reduction that produced measurable improvements in muscle protein synthesis rates in older participants. The preparation protocol is specific and non-negotiable if you want the active compound. Chop broccoli and leave it at room temperature for 40 minutes before applying any heat. That resting period allows myrosinase to fully convert glucoraphanin to sulforaphane before the enzyme is deactivated by cooking. After 40 minutes, steam for no more than 3 to 4 minutes, enough to soften the texture while preserving the sulforaphane that has already formed. 1 to 1.5 cups prepared this way, 5 times per week. The synergy pairing is a small amount of mustard seed powder sprinkled over the cooked broccoli. Mustard seeds contain an additional myrosinase enzyme that compensates for any enzyme loss during light steaming, substantially increasing the sulforaphane yield of the prepared broccoli. Research from the University of Illinois quantified that effect at up to a 400% increase in sulforaphane content compared to broccoli cooked without the mustard seed addition. That is the difference between broccoli as a vegetable side and broccoli as a targeted intervention for muscle maintenance. A 68-year-old man who had been a physically active tradesperson throughout his career found that strength had declined faster in his mid-60s than he had expected, to the point of limiting the activities that had been central to his identity and sense of capability. His muscle assessment showed elevated anabolic resistance and high myostatin markers. After implementing the broccoli preparation protocol described above as a consistent part of his evening meal, his 6-month functional assessment showed a 28% improvement in lower body strength and a 33% improvement in upper body endurance. The biology behind those results is what sulforaphane suppression of chronically elevated myostatin would predict. Number 1, beet greens. Most people who buy fresh beets remove the leafy tops and discard them. That is a significant loss, not because beet greens taste better than the root, but because they contain a compound that is nutritionally distinct from anything in the beetroot itself, and that addresses a mechanism of muscle aging that none of the other vegetables on this list directly targets. Beet greens are among the richest dietary sources of betaine, also called trimethylglycine, of any vegetable. Betaine performs a specific function inside cells called methylation. It donates molecular units called methyl groups to a biochemical process that is required for the correct expression of genes responsible for muscle repair, growth, and maintenance. Methylation is how the body reads and acts on its own genetic instructions for tissue maintenance. With age, methylation efficiency declines. When the genes governing muscle repair are poorly methylated, they produce defective or incomplete repair signals. The cellular instructions are present but corrupted in execution. Picture a set of architectural blueprints where key sections have become illegible over time. The building crew is still there, the materials are available, but the plans cannot be read accurately enough to complete the structure. Betaine restores the legibility of those plans. The Karolinska Institute research found that betaine intake in adults over 65 correlated directly with preservation of satellite cell function in muscle tissue. Satellite cells are the resident stem cells of skeletal muscle, the repair crew that activates after any physical stress or micro-damage to regenerate and strengthen fiber. After 70, satellite cell activation efficiency declines by up to 60%. This is one of the primary biological reasons that muscles stop responding to exercise and protein the way they once did. The repair mechanism is still structurally present but is being activated at a fraction of its former rate. Betaine partially restores that activation efficiency. A study published in the Journal of the International Society of Sports Nutrition found that adults consuming 2.5 grams of betaine daily, an amount achievable through regular beet green consumption, showed 25% greater improvement in muscle endurance and a measurable reduction in muscle breakdown markers over 6 weeks. 1 to 1.5 cups of cooked beet greens 4 to 5 times per week. Sauté in olive oil with 2 cloves of fresh garlic for 4 to 5 minutes. Garlic contains allicin, a compound that reduces cortisol-driven muscle protein breakdown, the catabolic process that increases in older adults under even mild daily stress. Beet greens and garlic together create an environment that simultaneously promotes repair through betaine's methylation support and reduces breakdown through allicin's cortisol dampening effect. That combination addresses both sides of the net muscle balance equation. The synergy pairing is a small amount of any protein source at the same meal, even a tablespoon of tahini or a single egg. Betaine's methylation support works most efficiently when amino acids are simultaneously present in the bloodstream, giving the repaired muscle genes immediate access to the building material they need to act on the improved repair signals. Beet greens are not always available in supermarkets. They are consistently available at farmers' markets when fresh beets are sold. The greens are attached and are frequently discarded by vendors who are unaware of their value. Ask specifically for the greens. What is being thrown away is, according to the research described here, one of the more targeted nutritional interventions available for aging muscle tissue. The 5 vegetables on this list address 5 distinct biological mechanisms: vascular delivery of nutrients to muscle tissue, anabolic signaling through ecdysterone receptor activation, mitochondrial biogenesis through vitamin A and PGC1 alpha, myostatin inhibition through sulforaphane, and satellite cell activation through betaine methylation support. These are not overlapping mechanisms. They are separate bottlenecks in the same overall system, and addressing only 1 or 2 of them while the others remain unaddressed limits the overall outcome. The research does not suggest that muscle loss after 70 is biologically inevitable. What it documents is that specific correctable nutritional deficits are contributing to the rate of that loss in predictable ways. Correcting those deficits, with the precision that specific vegetables used correctly can provide, shifts the biological balance in a measurable direction. That shift does not require pharmaceutical intervention, specialized equipment, or expensive supplementation. It requires the right vegetables, prepared the right way, paired with the right companions, consumed with the consistency that allows cumulative biological change to accumulate over weeks and months. The references for every study mentioned today are in the description. Bring them to a clinical conversation. They are worth discussing.